I was lucky enough last year to be asked by Cheltenham Literature Festival to write, am I allowed to mention that?
Yes, you are.
To write about people's experiences of the floods, poetry and prose pieces. They only asked me at the beginning of September, and it all had to be ready before the start of the festival, so I had 3.5 weeks. And I spoke to 41 people. And how I work with people when I do this is I ask them lots of questions and write down what they say. Fortunately, I can write very quickly and shape it into poems and pieces. Now, obviously, with such a short time scale, I'm afraid these are not works of great art. But what I've tried to do is capture the voices of the different people involved. And I'm just going to read you a selection that gives a range of different experiences from different people. So the first one is right at the beginning of the floods. And this was after talking to 2 men who managed the Pittville pump room, which was used as a refuge centre on the very first night of the floods. But strangely, it was also their last night of the Cheltenham Music Festival, so they had a concert going on while people were coming in the other door. So this is called The Violins Played On. There was no iceberg and no dancing, and the pump room didn't sing, but the violins played on. We didn't think of stopping the festival's last concert, although the rain was dropping like nothing I have ever seen. The winnings from a fruit machine, a cascade of disappearing money. At first, standing outside, it seemed quite funny to get wetter and wetter and still wetter, but then the penny dropped. The weather wasn't getting better. The lake was up over the road. The cars had slowed, they'd been abandoned. We were high and dry above a moat. But I couldn't help but feel that it all seemed quite surreal, that as the violins played on and on until the final note, and soaked survivors struggled to our music-loving lifeboat, they stood, bewildered and bedraggled, a raggle-taggle crew, and no one really knew just what to do. So, being British, we got out all the crockery and made shocked people cups of tea and noted all their names, families and foreigners. Disaster hits them just the same. The Red Cross brought clothing, blankets, games. Sainsbury's sent food. They all seemed quite subdued, chatting to make the time go by, quietly drinking, politely eating, focusing on getting dry. We turned on all the heating. And later, well, it was a shambles. Sleeping people everywhere, the floor, the chairs, the dressing rooms upstairs, all littered with unwitting and unwilling visitors snoring through the echoes of the concerts of the past. Of course, it didn't last. By 11 the next morning, every one of them had gone, but in my mind, the violins played on. Now, I think the first experience for many people was that it was actually quite exciting because we didn't really know what it was going to be like. I drove home myself that first day, and it was a bit of a thrill, you know, hitting a sheet of water and not knowing if you're actually going to come out the other side. And this is a very short poem that I wrote after talking to the manager of Brenda Books, which is based in Winchcombe. It's called Driving Home. Inside every driver, or perhaps it's only men, is an atavistic hunter longing for danger again. So when I drove through floods that night, I was ready to kill or be killed. And though I felt a little concern and fright, I'll confess, I was mostly just thrilled. I don't know if anybody else went through that, but it's quite a common feeling. The next poem came from some residents at Victoria Court Sheltered Housing, which is near Longford, near Gloucester. And these were obviously much older people, and some of them found it a bit difficult to cope, but they managed really well. And there were 3 of them in particular, and this poem focuses on the 3 different experiences that they had. It's called A Novel Experience. The water came up the road in waves, like the sea across flat sand. We stood on the steps and watched it, an anxious little band. Then me. Well, I made my escape, got out while the going was good. My sister came over to rescue me as quickly as she could. And me, with the others, I was evacuated, taken away by bus. And I tried to do as I was told, didn't make a fuss, but to get things packed in half an hour when you're older is much harder. I put in nightie, toothbrush and 2 pair of pants. Then off to the Ramada. So while friends and relatives worried about whether I was okay, I spent the night in luxury, like a little holiday. But me, I went to the bathroom in the early hours of the morning and felt cold water on bare feet. There wasn't any warning, and all I had was ruined, and my flat's just an empty shell. It's a novel experience, I'll tell you. But I think I'm coping well. I'll be 80 in December, and I'm hoping that by then everything will be back to normal, and I'll never go through this again. I like this because, have you noticed how when you ask older people how old they are, they never tell you. They always say, I'll be 80 next birthday, or I'll be 95 come December. And this was, I thought, yes, there she is again, that person. For some people, of course, the floods were a really devastating experience. It took away everything, I mean, really everything. And there are some people in Tewkesbury who still aren't back in their houses yet. There's one row of houses that's got caravans outside it. And this again was with an older lady who lives on her own in Tewkesbury, very near the river. Her house was very badly damaged. And it's called Washed Away. It was like the pictures on TV, but this was grim reality. The fridge freezer floating on its back, and the dining table overturned as if there'd been a bomb attack. Silence, shock, desolation, gloom. The whole town echoed in my room, and everywhere the strange medieval smell. And I put my memories in a skip, as if my life was washed away. All the little things I knew so well. Dad's stamp album, just a blip in time. The hymn book used each Sunday by my mum, just rubbish now. And I look around and wonder how to stop feeling that my home's been raped. I must be grateful though. I can escape, walk up an alley, get away from here whenever it really gets me down. In Bangladesh, it happens every year. And people drown. For younger people, it was quite a different experience. Younger people tend to have a completely different take on things like this, which, and I don't want to generalise, but it does tend to be focused more towards themselves than other people. And this was written with a 17-year-old girl. It's called Timing. I was the leading lady. First night, my chance to shine. But just before the curtain rose, that sweet mother of mine showed me photos of our flooded home, defiled and devastated. On stage, timing is everything. Mum, couldn't you have waited? And the next one was with a still younger boy. He was about 14, and he lived in Priors Park. It's called Worst Birthday. I really need a hoodie. It was horrible, like any flood, I suppose. Not what I planned for the school holidays, unloading bread and water from a lorry and carting it around to older people. Hard work, that. And my worst birthday ever. We were going paintballing, haven't made it yet. I did get into Cheltenham, spent my money on a games console, but my trainers got all wet, soaked through. I won't let Mum forget. I need some more. Brand new. I did find out afterwards that this boy actually spent day after day just walking from the delivery centre to people who were housebound, taking them bread and water, always smiling, always cheerful, never complaining. But that wouldn't be cool to say that, would it?